Hi, I'm Brian with BookExpo America. I'm here with Chris Matthews, author of the forthcoming Tip and the Gipper. Chris, how you doing this morning?
I'm good. We just had a big event here at BEA. It was great.
Thanks for doing that event. Can you tell us a little bit about the forthcoming title?
Yeah, it's about, I worked for 6 years for Speaker of the House Tip O'Neill, and he was a big liberal from Massachusetts. And the whole time I was with him, we were up against Ronald Reagan, probably the most popular conservative president ever, one of the great presidents, many people believe. And they were 180 in terms of their philosophies and their politics. And yet, I think it's a great example of how great political leaders from both sides can get some stuff done together. And it wasn't like they necessarily compromised. They found a way to let each other do what they thought needed to get done, following the public demand for action. It worked.
So certainly an odd couple there. Any political pairings that are kind of achieving that now?
I think the important thing is that I've gotten to this at the end of the book. I think what really drove them to get something done was the urgency of their own lives. It was the last act for Tip O'Neill. It was Ronald Reagan's only act as president. They had to get it done. They're both in their 70s. And that urgency, I think, of mortality forced them to cut great deals on tax reform, on the solving the war up in Northern Ireland, on saving the Social Security system, on really preparing for the end of the Cold War in the way that Tip supported Reagan when he met with Gorbachev. And so there was a lot of urgency there that forced them to make sure it worked. And today there's a lot of dithering around and posturing and speech making and dysfunction and filibusters and sequestrations and all this Mickey Mouse stuff that goes on today, accomplishing really nothing. No one can tell you right now what the Congress has done for 30 or 40 years. They literally can't say what they've ever done. What do they do except fight and argue over stuff that doesn't get done?
What was your process for writing this book?
Well, I did keep a journal, and I relied a great deal upon what I'd written. And I was very personal about my situation in the office, even little problems with the office and fights with the speaker and other people in the staff. So I kept it very intramural. And also, I also had in the book the strategies I was pushing, the way I was trying to figure out how to move the speaker on to the next fight with Reagan, how to position ourselves. So I would be regularly saying, this week I got to get this done. This is where we got to end up on election day. It was all about winning the '82 election against Reagan, which we did win, and how I went about doing it. All the crazy stuff I did, you might call them publicity stunts, big demonstration with labor unions at the White House in the middle of the night, things like that. Getting the homeless people out there to go to war with the White House. A lot of things I was able to do behind the scenes. And Tip would occasionally say to me, is this one of yours? Which made me so happy. I loved it when he asked me, is this one of yours? Because I would be pulling these numbers on the side, all clean politics, but tricky stuff. And also Reagan's diaries are spectacular. Reagan would go home every night and write down what happened that day. And every time he fought with Tip or got along with Tip or liked Tip or didn't like Tip, he'd write that down. And also every day we had a press conference with the speaker. And I have the complete transcripts of every single press conference. And I was standing next to him. I'd stand like this. He'd be there saying what he thought of Reagan every day. It's all on the record. So on the record, diary notes from Reagan. On the record, journal notes from me. On the record, statements by Tip every day. So we were able to go back to primary sources. So it isn't a lot of generalizations. It's a specific example of how two people who are grown-ups can work together.
Shifting gears a little bit, what do you like to read?
I get up in the morning at 7 o'clock and I read the paper. Does that sound old enough, old fart enough? I read the paper. I read the Washington Examiner, which is a shopper, because it's great items. It's a late deadline. It's got all kinds of, got some conservative writers like Byron York, who's very smart. And I like to read the little items because it's like getting, like my friend Walter Superior used to say, you got to read something else before you read the Times. You got to get the revs up. You know, the Times is a little hard to read into. So then I'll read the Washington Post. It requires less revs. And I work my way up to the Times, and I'm really ambitious. And also Politico. I love Politico because it's got all the cream of politics. And I will look at the journal to read the front page and see if there's anything on the op-ed page worth reading. I don't care about business. So I try to figure out what's going on. I check the Philly scores. In history, it's all history and biography is what I read.
And we're talking...
I have a whole backlist of books I have to pick up. I want to read Caro's book, the latest on Johnson. I want to read NASA's book, The Patriarch. I'm definitely into Jonathan Alder's book. I already started that. But see, I've been working constantly. You want to know my reading habits? How about my writing habits? I stay up till I can't stay up any longer. I get up as early as I can. I steal time away from my show by going for the morning and at night. Because once I have to go working on my show, which is sometime after 9, it's very hard for me to do anything else, especially around noon or 1, when it goes crazy till 6 o'clock. So I only can maybe steal an hour after I've got the show figured out in the morning with my executive producer. We've figured that out, hashed that out around 9:30. Then I can maybe steal an hour or so, maybe. and then I got to get out and get to work. But basically, it's early morning, a little bit late in the morning when I really was pushing, and then staying up till I fall asleep. And it's not probably very good for you to stay up till you fall asleep. But I literally fall over. That's what I write. How else am I going to do it? I'm doing 6 shows a week. Am I New Yorkie enough for this? I'm doing 6 shows a week. What am I supposed to do here?
And how you writing? You jump on an iPad, laptop, you get in a desktop?
It's iPad, of course, and I've got a really nice thin one I can carry around with me. And I basically have 4 rules of writing. Collect in these big binders for each chapter, big loose-leaf binders with stuff in it, usually all these clippings. Oh, I didn't mention the other source, which is New York Times, Washington Post, Time Magazine, Newsweek, UPI, AP. All those daily things are really good. Journalism is really good if you look at just the straight front-page reporting. So I've got those binders, stuff, some secondary sources. I thought John Farrell's book on TIP was excellent. I think Lou Cannon's the best writer about Reagan. So I put that in there. So you've got basically the primary sources, then you've got the daily news coverage, and then you get the secondary sources, which are always good because they have a good sense of narrative that you have to remind yourself of how things worked out. And I put them in each chapter. So there's 23 chapters, and each one of them has everything in it. So it's collecting. And then within each collective item, each of those catalogs, you have to order them. So basically, it's a process of collection, organization, then further organization, then roughing it, then polishing. And I always tell people you'll never have writer's block if you follow those 4 stages, but most people get in trouble by getting in the wrong stage. They're still collecting and they start to write the lead. No, don't do that. You'll screw yourself up. Or they'll start to write before they've organized. You've got to do collect, organize, rough, and then polish. Then you could probably keep polishing forever, like most really good writers do. I'm not sure I get that far, but I do try to polish. So that's how I do it. Good answer, huh? You were shocked at how cogent that was, right? You thought it was going to be some BS answer. I give you the 4 stages of greatness.
We're getting it all right here. Very, very insightful at Book Expo. So dare I ask this? Doesn't sound like you have a lot of time for quote unquote pleasure reading, but anything there?
That's what I told you the books. You're losing your track here. I told you the books.
That's not very light. I'm looking for light stuff. I want to surprise the audience.
I'm reading Safe Haven right now. Nicholas Sparks. I love it. I love it. I love it. I don't care what anybody says, chick flick or whatever, all that nonsense. I love this book. I love his writing.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, and I of course, Gatsby, keep rereading that. But, I think I'm going to do all the Hemingway stuff this summer. I'm taking the 2 boys to Pamplona. So I'm going to go back and read Death in the Afternoon, which many people believe that non-fictional account of bullfighting is some of the best writing, maybe the best writing Hemingway did. And so I'm going to get back into that, read Sun Also Rises for the 100th time, which has got some amazing, backstory. The backstory of Jake Barnes walking down the street at night, waving to all the cafes. And you're really thinking, not a guy walking down the street waving to cafes, but the utter loneliness of the guy in his world, Great stuff, huh? Hemingway.
So last thing
here. It's
here.
not in the print. It's the backstory with Hemingway. You can't imitate him because you have to get down to his backstory. Then you really know why he was great and why everybody loves him.
He the best American writer in your mind?
He's the best pathfinder for life. Bigger than that.
Last thing. Before you went on, we were chatting about, overheard some talk of The Godfather. What's that film mean to you?
Well, I liked it. I mean, I've got bigger films. Lawrence Arabia's my favorite film, and Casablanca. I have very traditional taste, and Shane and movies like that, The Searchers. I mean, the obvious great movies. I just watched African Queen again. Anything, Capper's always great. Mr. Smith's is fabulous. Some of the other movies, political movies, are great. The Candidate was well done. What am I thinking? Godfather. The Godfather is great because it has 2 or 3 scenes which are going to always be in movie history. The hospital scene when he goes to save his father, and the restaurant scene. And the restaurant scene is spectacular because Francis Ford Coppola and Puzo took a page or so from the book, or 2 or 3 pages, and turned it into this magical frieze where you are Michael. And you are sitting there at that table with that guy, the Turk, and you're speaking Italian to him, and you don't dislike the guy necessarily. And as a cop, you really do dislike the Irish cop because he's a bad guy. But you're really mixed on that moment. Am I going to shoot this guy when he's trying to talk to me and empathize with me? He's really trying to make a deal, but he won't protect my father. And you realize you've got this almost Hamlet-like requirement that you got to act. Great stuff, huh?
Absolutely. So it sounds like Turner Classic Movies is your perhaps channel of choice.
No, when I retire, I'll do Netflix. But I'm saving it. I was in a Peace Corps with a guy. We'd always go to the movies, and he was in his 40s at the time. He said, "No, I'm saving them." So I think a lot of people do that.
Well, Chris, thank you very much for your time.
Brian,
we appreciate
it's an honor
you
to meet
being here.
BRIEN.
That's me.
Thank you.